All right, this is Nathan, and this is the second half of my screencast of the presentation I'm going to be giving this weekend at the Oregon Athletic Directors Association Spring Conference, which deals with productivity and time management for athletic directors. And so I'm going to go ahead and go back a slide. I finished the first half of the presentation talking about this touch at once zero inbox email system. And one of the cool things that I found is Boomerang, which is basically the same system, but it's done for you using an add-on to Gmail. So if you have Outlook, you may already have all these the ability to do this. But with Boomerang, if you have Gmail, you can use Boomerang. It's $14 a month, depending on what kind of Gmail you have. Some, I think it's free. But I used the trial version of it and I got addicted. And I was too cheap to pay the $14 per month. I really probably should have the department do that. But I went back to the first, and so I've gotten kind of lazy. I was great at it, and then I did Boomerang, and Boomerang was so stinking easy. I could schedule when I sent emails. So rather than sending an email at 8 o'clock at night to a parent that I forgot to send the email to, I would turn around and schedule it for 6 a.m. the next morning. And so, I think it's really important with emails that you need to set boundaries. And if you're emailing people at 8 o'clock at night, you wouldn't make a phone call at 8 o'clock at night, at least unless it was an emergency. I don't take phone calls after 7 p.m. Really, I don't take phone calls at home. If people want to call me, they can leave a message, and if it's important, I'll call them back, And so, it's one of those things where having the ability to schedule emails going out is pretty cool. The other thing that it does is that you can set a Boomerang, and let's say I send an email to a coach and I'm asking them to do something. It will email me back. It'll put that email back in my box and remind me that I have not gotten a response from that coach. So it's pretty cool. If you use Gmail, check it out. You may be able to use it for free. You might have to pay for it. But I think for me, it definitely increases productivity. So I really like it. And the more I talk about it, the more I'm thinking maybe it's worth $14 a month. So, all right, alternative to email. So as I've said earlier, using email is not being used for the purposes that it was intended. It's used for spam. It's used for, I'll send an email giving someone something, and then they respond thanks, and it's one word deal, and I mean there's just tons of emails that you really don't need to read or that don't need to be sent, and so things that internal communication with people in the office or on your team or on your staff, whatever. It ends up getting lost in a sea of noise. And so a lot of companies are doing away with email for internal communication, and what they're using are Voxer or Slack. And so I found at a workshop with Brian Kane this past March, we used WhatsApp to communicate with one another, and people are still using it. Like, they'll ask questions of the group. They're athletic directors from all over the country, and guys, I think people like it. And these are not necessarily people that are big email people. And I think that that's something to be said, that you're going to have coaches and staff members that aren't necessarily, email people. But if you create an app that's on their phone, it creates a chronological log of all these messages. And I just think it's a way that I know that, hey, if I get a message on this WhatsApp, it's another AD in this group, or if I create one for my coaching staff, that it's one of my coaches, and I don't have to worry about emails and whether or not they're, is this something I need to read? Is this something I need to read later? All that kind of stuff. So I think the more you're able to stay away from email, the more productive that you'll be during your day. So check that out. It's free. It's pretty cool. All right, so TED Talk on if you have a meeting, take a walk. And this is something I started doing about a year ago, is that when people called and left messages, I would take all those messages, I'd write them down, phone calls, who I was supposed to call back, and then I'd leave my office and I'd go for a walk. And I would walk for a half hour if my meetings on the phone took a half hour, or I'd try to schedule meetings with coaches. So my track coach, our preseason meeting, we went for a walk. And, he was kind of a little bit taken aback by that, but I'm like, let's go for a walk. Let's not sit in my office for 15 minutes. Let's go for a walk. And so this TED Talk by Nilofer Merchant, she talks about how she walks about 20 to 30 miles a week doing this. And I don't think that I'm doing that, but it's a great way to get out, take a look at your facilities, see what's going on during the day, and be able to be productive and healthy at the same time. All right, speaking of health, Dr. Gilbert on Success Hotline, he'll do once a year or so a stress reduction seminar, and he'll say, the good news is you're not going to die, but the bad news is that you're going to kill yourself, and you're going to kill yourself because of stress. And so, as it says there, you can either meditate or medicate. And so having some sort of mindfulness practice or breathing exercise or whatever is shown to be really, really beneficial. And I found when I tie that in to my AM routine, I am more productive and more focused at work. And, just to demystify the idea of what, mindfulness is, it is not anything associated with some sort of Eastern philosophy or Eastern religion. What it is it's just like when I go for a run, I'm training my body in a particular way. When I sit and I do my mindfulness practice, I'm focusing, or I'm training my brain to focus its attention on one thing and to put its focus where I want it to go, not wherever it goes by default. And especially as the world, gets into these, 3-second cuts in commercials and, constant challenges for our attention, being able to train your focus in that area, I think is tremendously helpful. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into this, but I'm going to show you a couple examples of what you can do. So this is what's called a concentration grid. And the basic idea is that you can, you're going to start your stopwatch and you're going to start at 1 and work your way through 99 and cross out the boxes. And two things, I did this with my class earlier today, 2 classes, and one, I found that they were way more focused later on in class than they are on a normal day. It was really kind of interesting to watch. 2, we talked about what was going on in your mind when you couldn't find, when I did this the other night and I got to like 65 and I couldn't find 66. And I thought, through my head went the thought that some idiot left out 66 and this is a joke and it's just meant to frustrate me. And then all of a sudden you find 66 and you move on to the next thing. And so what it does is and you can do this a couple different ways, so that you do it just by itself and you're doing as fast as you can and you're training your focus. The second benefit is that you rehearse self-talk. And so as you're performing, as a baseball player or as a coach calling plays or during a timeout, you're going to have self-talk. And so how do you deal with that self-talk? Are you going to make it positive? Are you going to shut down the negative? Those sorts of things. And then the final thing is that, like, I played music today. So it was quiet for a little while. Kids got into a group, and then I turned music on and talked about, okay, what's that distraction like? How did you deal with that? And so it's really a cool thing. If you're a coach, I think it's a great thing for kids to do before they go out to the field every once in a while to help gain their focus. That transition from student or teacher into coach or athlete, that's tough. And so finding ways to do that I think is of benefit to coaches and worth your time. This dot is there for you to focus on, and you breathe in for 5 and then out for 5 and then in for 5, or you can breathe in for 5, hold for 5, out for 5, hold for 5, and do that for a set amount of time. And it just gives kids or coaches or you something to focus on. Another thing you can do is breathe in on the number 1 with a 5 count, hold for 5 on 2, breathe out for 3, breathe in, hold for 4, breathe in, or you can breathe. You can go from number to number, breathing in and then breathing out on a 5 count. And so the idea is to slow your breath and focus your attention. And there's some great research just on controlling your breath for periods of time, where your brain waves, your heartbeat, and your breath all synchronize with one another. And that sounds a little woo-woo, but there's hardcore science that goes with it, and I think that you'd find some benefit in doing that if you're not someone that can close your eyes and focus on clearing your mind or those sorts of things. These might be external tools to help you do that. All right, so I talked a little bit about this in the first half of the presentation, but what I try to do is build an MIT list or a success list as opposed to to-do lists. And so what I do is I have 2 different kind of pots that I can pull from in order to keep myself busy during the time blocks that I have to do meaningful work. And so a capture list is just things that aren't necessarily urgent, but that if I have time to do them, I'm going to work them in because they are important. And then what I try to do, how I want to frame the MIT, the most important tasks, is that what I'm going to try to do before I go home from work, or while I'm sitting at home during my PM routine, or when I get up in the morning, when I create that list of 5 things, what I think is, okay, my purpose is that I want to be the best athletic director that I can be. And so my mission is what the best version of myself in this moment, what can I do to further my mission or attain that purpose? And so I try to put it in that way. And so sometimes I don't really have things that are super urgent. And so it's like, okay, what do I need to do? And so it might have to do with Booster Club. It might have to do with fundraising. It might have to do with, something like that. So anyway, when I'm doing my time blocking, I shut my door, I lock it, I lower the blinds. My secretary knows to keep people out of my office. Are there people that interrupt? Yes. But are there fewer interruptions when I do that? Absolutely. And do I get a lot more done by doing that? 100%. All right, flip meetings. Right now I'm using Screencast-O-Matic to record the screencast. You might want to think about doing that for things that, maybe more point of information than a discussion. As a coach, I never really cared for showing up at 6 a.m. to get an agenda of things that, I'm supposed to do, clerical type stuff. People aren't great with emails. So finding a different way to communicate with people, these are the things that I expect of you. You need to take care of this, and this, and this is something that we need to talk about. Finding a way to get that out to people. And then if they're not watching them and responding to you in the way that you want, then I would say Google Hangouts would be another way, or Skype. And then, obviously if they're not participating in that, then you make them get up at 5-something in the morning and be there at 6 a.m. for a coaches meeting. But, that's their choice. I've got about a minute left, so Evernote's a great tool. I could I've written whole blog pieces on that. I love Evernote. It's a great way to take notes and put everything together in an organized fashion. Resources that I use today, The One Thing by Gary Keller, Deep Work by Cal Newport, and then Optimized by Brian Johnson. He really synthesized a bunch of this information for me, and I've just kind of picked and choose what was valuable. My contact information is nathan.stanley at redmondschools.org. And please hit me up on Twitter at Nathan Stanley, or go to my blog, smartcoaching.co. thanks for listening, and hope to